Today I have a Samsung SV5000, much like the one you see blowing up right here, that won't load tapes. So this one here, it loads about halfway and then stops and ejects. I know what you're thinking, but you'll be wrong. It's not a mode switch problem. We're going to tear this one apart and get to the bottom of it. This one's for one of my clients, so let's take a look at it. So this time I got a Samsung SV5000 in from one of my commercial clients. I do a lot of his maintenance work for him, for his equipment. This time it says played 1 2-hour PAL tape. It played fine, loaded the next tape. It played a few seconds, stopped, and ejected. Ejected not entirely, seemed to get stuck, being pushed out the slot. VCR kept cycling between loading and unloading, tape getting stuck, pushing tape out. Pulled the plug, waited an hour, and ejected the tape with no trouble. I say fine, the image quality was fine, was suffering from the comet tails. I was going to try the tape again, but ran into issues with the next tape. Last time, years ago, I fixed the comets by fixing a common grounding issue, and yeah, these ones did have a grounding issue that affected the drum. So we'll check that, but again, it's not working, so let's rip this one apart and see what's wrong. Alright, this one here, let's plug it in. We'll put some tapes in this thing and see what it does. Common on these is capacitors that blow up in the power supply, cause weird problems. Alright, this thing's in PAL mode, it looks like. Put it into NTSC and we'll observe what it does. Oh! Not completing the loading cycle. Wow. I think the gear is slipping. And it also looks terrible. It's got a capacitor issue in it as well. That is how it's playing this tape. And that looks just horrendous. It's starting to clear up once it gets warmed up. So this has got capacitor issues in it, but it's also got a mechanical issue because it did not complete the loading cycle, as you saw. And it's more than likely the loading motor. More than likely the loading motor has got a problem. The bottom of this, there's a worm gear on here, and it tends to crack. And if I help it along, when it jams, right, if I help it along, it's going to work. This is more than likely what's happened, is this gear has developed a crack on it. That's more than likely our fault on this one. It's going to be the worm gear on the bottom of the motor is slipping. The gear is more than likely got a crack, and the motor shaft is spinning around inside the plastic gear that's broken. So I'll start by removing the mechanism. Take the front panel off first. And this will need capacitors done on it for sure. As we can see the interference on the picture until it warmed up. There's a cap, usually a cap or two, that goes bad in the power supply on these. I've got one of these machines. Doesn't get used all that much. Every so often I'll get a PAL tape, PAL or CCAM tape, so I haul it out for that, and the rest of the time it just kind of sits on the floor in the corner in my office, like everything else. Just turn it on its side and sit it behind the door until it's needed. That includes my EVS5000. Speaking of 8mm stuff, so I sell cameras, right? People give me old cameras that they're getting rid of for whatever reason, right? They're usually broken. Well, they're always broken. Nobody ever gives me a working camera. I wish. The fellow that brought me this gave me a couple of old digital 8s that were scrap, and I took pieces off others to fix them. See if so much added grounding a grounding screw added, a grounding wire added to ground the chassis, because the ground here sometimes gets weak. The bond between the chassis and the rest of it gets bad. But anyway, I quite often sell surplus cameras that I've got. Well, I always sell surplus cameras. I don't need to keep them. I don't need any high 8 or 8mm cameras. I have a bunch of digital 8 that will play back analog recordings, so I just use those. And when I get a good working high 8 or 8mm camera, I put them up for sale. I don't sell them on eBay. I sell them only on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. Are the only two places I really ever unload equipment, because I only sell local. I don't sell to just anybody. Unplug these, and this should lift out if I've got all the screws. The chassis should lift out. Oh, I should point out there's two in the bottom, by the way, that you have to take out from the bottom. Anyway, where was I going? Oh, right, yeah, see his ground. He's got it grounded down to there, but this has to make contact with the bottom of the drum. Anyway, I get a call from a guy. I actually sold two of them today. One guy came over to my place and picked one up, a high 8 camera, but another fellow had a regular 8 camera. Had it up on Facebook and had it up on Craigslist, and I get this call from a fellow. He wants the regular 8 camera. I said, okay, yeah, no problem. I'll sell you the regular 8 camera. And he says, I want a public meetup. I don't want to come out there. Okay. He said, can we meet at one of the local police stations? He said, I want a safe place to meet up. Whatever. Well, I'll meet you at the police station. I got no problem with that. So I go out to the local police station, and anyway, of course he wants to see it work. So I had a battery with me from one of my other cameras, and put the battery in and showed him that it works. And he puts a tape in, plays the tape, and there's a couple of young girls dancing, right? And this guy looks, he's in about his 30s, and then he just has to say it. He has to say, "This is me and my twin sister." And I'm thinking to myself, how do you come back to that when someone says that to you? Some stranger tells you that they are that they used to be a woman. The first thing I'm thinking to myself is, why does just some stranger come out and tell me this? Do I care? I just didn't have a comeback. I had to think for a second, and I just said, wow, that's more information than I needed to know. Do you want the camera or not? I don't know. It was just like one of those things, too much information. I think where our problem on this is, it's going to be this little collar down here. It's got a crack in it. Let's see if I'm right. Am I right? But yeah, that was like one of those, now I know why he wanted me to meet at the police station. He wanted a safe space. Whoops, there's where it's cracked, right there, you can see it. There's a crack right there in that gear. You can see it right along the edge there. Can I point it out or something? Looks to be a crack right there. So what's happening is this is slipping. The same thing that happens on all Sony's, right? The front loading mechanism. The plastic over time shrinks, and once the plastic shrinks, it slips. See, it shouldn't slide that easy on here. And good luck trying to find one of these. I think probably the only thing I can do on this is to glue it, and hopefully the glue will hold. I've glued my own successfully many times with different equipment, and it's been fine. But that's about the only hope I've got for something like this, is to put some glue on there, and hopefully that will hold it. Or otherwise, he has to do what I have to do with mine. My SV5000's got the same problem, by the way. I haven't bothered to take mine apart and glue it, but mine's developed the same type of problem, and so I don't use it very often. So when I do need to use it, I just pull the top off it and turn the gear by hand to complete the loading. That's what I do on mine, because it's got the same fault as this. I got to take mine apart, do a video on that maybe at some point, but my own equipment tends to take a back seat to others when it comes in. I work on my own stuff when it's slow. So let's try to put some glue on this one here. Crazy glue really won't work that well because it's nylon. I'll try some JB Weld. See whether that will get this to stick. It's worked before on the front loaders, like for Sony and so forth, right? It's worked on those ones okay. So I'm going to mix up some epoxy and put some epoxy in here and see whether that will. That should hold this one. It's certainly worked on other machines I've done it on, and I've used this for years. This is just steel reinforced epoxy, that's why it's gray. JB Weld or reasonable facsimile. Key is to try to get some in here without getting too much on the shaft itself, because I don't want to glue the motor in place. So we'll put some down inside here. Got to get this to the right alignment before it sets up. Make sure that there's enough clearance here for this to fit on. Okay, I'll let it set like that, and we'll get that dry. And then while that's drying, I'll do the power supply on this, because it does need it's going to need caps changed on the power supply for sure, due to all that interference I was seeing when I first started it up. So make sure that there's no glue that's going to touch anything on the motor. Remove the control board. Oh, that would explain why. Oh! RF connector adapters on the back. Something I've never used on mine. Okay, usually it's a couple caps down here that go bad. I think they may have been changed before. Well, maybe not. But we'll check the ESR. This had all the symptoms of bad high ESR on the caps, just from those thin lines that were in the picture. No, I don't think they've been changed. I don't think they've been changed on this one. Usually use a couple couple small ones down here that go high. Yeah, 1.4, 3.1. There's 2 or 3 of them usually go bad on the set and cause problems, and these ones down in here. Actually, you'll see on my opening, I've got one of these that I blew up, my own machine that I blew up intentionally. I had a bad cap in it, and I took the cap out and I put it in backwards, and then I put the board back in, and I staged it to make the cap blow up. Now you get my little secret there. For my opening logo, I blew one up intentionally, and everybody fell for it too. Everybody fell for it, but that was an intentional cap explosion that I did on my SV5000. Check this one out of circuit. See how bad it is. What did that say? 29? Oh, 1 ohm. 47 at 50 volts is bad, because it should be like 0.5 maximum, and it's 1 ohm. So this one's got to go. 47 at 50 volts is bad. That one's bad, and this other one behind it also should be bad. Pull it out as well. I think those are the only 2 on these ones, if I remember, that really give us the most trouble. I'll be sure to put one in backwards just for the dramatic effect, because one faces one direction and one faces the other on this one. Negative on this one faces to the edge of the board, and negative on the other one faces the other way, which is kind of an oddball way of doing things, because usually they put caps in the same direction. This one here is 2.3. Okay, 2.3, but it's 100 volt 10 microfarad. That one might be okay, actually. 100 volt 10 microfarad. Yeah, that one's actually okay. 3 ohms, because this is a 100 volter. I don't know if I've got a 100 volt. Let me see what I've got. These 2 for sure need to be changed. Here's a new 10 at 100. Let's see how much lower it is. So it's 0.5. So a lot lower. This would be, I believe, in the display for the vacuum fluorescent display. This one, that's why the voltage is as high as it is. And the other one was a 47? Yeah, 47. resoldered the ground tab on the back here, the electrode. Sometimes these let go. Maybe mode switch cleaning probably wouldn't hurt while it's apart. Just pop it apart like that, and we'll give it a shot of cleaner. I can put the board back in order to do that. I don't need to switch all apart. I don't need the board out to do this. Another little bit, just leave it a little bit behind just to keep the contacts clean. Spin it around a bit. And next, set the mechanism back in. So here I am working away, and the UPS truck pulls up to deliver some equipment coming in for service. Idiot. I'm right here. I've got the door open. I'm expecting this clown. And what does this guy do? I'm sitting right here. He walks right past me and takes everything to the back door and stacks it like right there. Hello, I was right there. All he had to do is, I got a delivery, but no, he takes it and puts it around the back. Of course, before putting the mechanism in, we got to plug in the interconnect that connects the front board. Plug that in, and I'll put the front board back on while I'm at it. Remember when I used to ground these, we also used to put one down here onto the chassis itself, because now it's grounding through here, and this is touching against the chassis, which in theory is a ground, but it can break. Alright, I guess put the front panel on and we can test this machine out. If you want to see something funny, a friend just sent me this one here. Cassette tapes, Scotch Type 4 metal, $600 for 10 90-minute cassette tapes. Is somebody on drugs? Like, first of all, Scotch didn't even make that good a metal tape. Back in the day when you were recording on metal tapes, you'd use TDK or Maxell. You didn't use Scotch. Back in the day, the TDK and Maxell sold for around $15 a pop. You could buy these ones for like $3.95. These were the discount ones. And somebody seems to think a case of them is worth $600. I hope he gets it, because I've got 2 or 3 of these kicking around that have never been opened. If some clown gets $600 for it, maybe I'll get the same for mine. I actually have a case of Sony Type 3 ferrochrome tapes. Probably the most rare tapes in the world. And one of the best. And I got a full case of them that's never been opened. Wonder what they're worth. Alright, let's see if this thing works. Well, here it is playing my my NTSC tape. We'll try putting a PAL tape in it and see how it looks. Okay, there's a a Wiggles tape from wherever it came from. I guess I converted this over for someone years ago. So that's a PAL tape. Let's try a CCAM tape next. That was that one there. And I just hang on to it. I converted this over for someone years and years ago, and they didn't want the tape back, so I just kind of hang on to it so that I've got a original PAL tape to do comparison. This is the CCAM tape. Those lines you're seeing on the screen there are not there, okay? You see these lines, that's not in the image. That's just on the camera because the camera is shooting. So this thing track up. CCAM always looks like crap anyway. I mean, CCAM never looks good. I could play it on mine and it would look just as bad as this. There you go. So there's CCAM. CCAM was a crappy format. Video format CCAM was the pits. But there is CCAM playing as well. And if I went and put it on mine, it would look about the same because, as I say, CCAM looks like crap. It never did look good. The VHS CCAM, even I think looking at it on a CCAM monitor looks like crap if I remember, because I put mine. I got a multi-system monitor and I did a video before where I played it back. So. Anyway, it's working. It's converting CCAM, it's converting PAL. That's what this machine is designed for. So I just got it in pause there so I don't have to listen to the French. But that's how CCAM looks. This tape I think was dumped on the Sprinter, if I'm not mistaken too. I think I saw somewhere on here it was sprinted. Maybe it was another one I had. I think I got an Italian tape that's in PAL. And it shows Sprinter on it, has a little picture to show that a Sprinter is a direct copy. It's not a recording. It's a printed copy off of a metal mother tape, like a master tape. Mother tape because it's a reverse, right? It's a mirror image, and they bring the two tapes together, and magnetism transfers from one to the other. It was a way of high-speed duplicating videotapes. But there you go. There's CCAM playback. Let's see if I can find another PAL tape. I know I have some other PAL tapes. My brother-in-law lives in Australia, and they used to send us stuff that they recorded off their local TV there years ago. I've got half a dozen or so tapes kicking around that they sent over, probably 25 years ago, back when VHS was still the thing. 25 or 30 years ago. Anyway, be back from the 90s. Anyway, they used to record stuff and send it back to us, and I used to play it on my PAL machine, but I don't know where I did with them. They're in a box somewhere. I did go through a box, though, and it was one of those oh my god moments. I have this bag, like a tote bag. It's been sitting in the hall. It's been sitting in a box, like in the corner in the hallway next to the shoe cabinet, and I forgot what was in it. I opened it up thinking, I knew there was tapes in it, but I didn't know what was in it, and I just came across a whole bunch of old Betamax tapes, and it was like one of those oh crap kind of moment. I've been looking for these tapes. I've been looking for them for years. I was going to digitize all these tapes, and I put them in a bag, like tapes that are more important for me, ones that I really want to get done. And I put them in a bag, and I put them in the hall in this big zip-up bag, like the type that you carry around in the trunk of your car for like a tote bag, right? Big zip-up nylon bag. And it's been sitting literally in the corner by the door for probably 10 years, and other stuff was put on top of it, sitting under a shoe rack basically in the corner. And I just happened to pull this bag out and look at it. It's like, oh crap, I've been looking for these tapes. So now I got to get on that. That's going to be a project, because I found all kinds of stuff that I shot. Like a lot of this is personal stuff, like Expo 86, for example. I went to, when Expo 86 was in Vancouver, I went there almost every day, and I carried around my Sony SL2000 and HVC 2800 camera. I carried that monster around with me to all the pavilions, and so there's going to be some interesting stuff that I filmed back then that I've never seen. We'll get to those, and you guys will see them here. I will find those tapes, digitize them, and we'll do a video on them, because I got some interesting stuff that I shot years ago that I think might be of interest. But anyway, this is playing this CCAM tape. It's looking good. I mean, for CCAM. it's looking as good as CCAM is going to look, I guess, because CCAM was the hardest standard to convert. Most of these converting machines didn't do a very good job of doing it, and this one here does it about as well as I've ever seen any of them do it, because CCAM just didn't look great to begin with. We'll try that PAL tape again, and then we'll call this one done. Go back to the wiggles and let it go through its tracking mode. Auto tracking. There you go. As you can see, the PAL ones look fantastic, and that's just for VHS. PAL was a much better system than CCAM. CCAM, for those that are wondering, as far as a broadcast standard went for over-the-air broadcasting, I'm not talking recording on tape, I'm talking over-the-air broadcasting, CCAM had the best bandwidth and it had the best color because of the way it was transmitted. They were using FM subcarriers for the color, for the red and the blue subchannels that were multiplexed, time division multiplexed in. So for an over-the-air broadcast, CCAM looked the best of all of the systems. And then PAL for over-the-air broadcast. And then good old NTSC, never twice the same color that we were stuck with over here in North America. And NTSC actually could look very good if it was in a component format. It was just that the reason NTSC looked as bad as it did over broadcast was because of where the audio subcarrier was, which was at 4.5 megahertz, which limited the amount of bandwidth that the signal could carry. It also only had 480 active lines versus 576 active lines for PAL and CCAM. So the active lines was a little bit lower, but that was made up for because the frame rate was 60 fields versus 50. So we had a faster frame rate but fewer lines, but the faster frame rate made up for those fewer lines because there was less motion blur. The reason that we got stuck with NTSC in North America was because black and white TV had been around for many years when color was developed. And unlike over in Europe, which didn't have much in the way of black and white TV, yes, I know they had a 400 line system over in the UK, which was abandoned, but when color came around. But in North America, black and white was very well established, and the FCC in the United States, this was before the CRTC I think even existed in Canada, but we basically followed their broadcast standard. But the FCC demanded that any color system that was going to be accepted was going to produce a picture that was compatible with the existing black and white. There was more than one color system that was devised. There was a system put out by CBS, which, believe it or not, used a rotating mechanical filter that spun in front of the picture tube. If you can imagine a TV big enough to have this big disc with colored glass wheels in it that would spin, and it would be synchronized with the beam as it's scanning. And they ran it at 120 frames instead of 60 fields. They ran it at 120 so they could make up for the shortcomings of such a system. Otherwise you would see the color flickering, right? But if you could imagine having a television with a mechanical disc spinning in front of the picture tube. Now, back then picture tubes weren't that big. You know, they were 12-inch, 13-inch tubes back then. They didn't have big 32-inch tubes. They were pretty small back then in those days, back in the, in the 40s and 50s. But if you could imagine having a TV that needed to be big enough to have this mechanical disc that was spinning in front of the tube, and then you watched it through this spinning disc. That was the CBS Labs system. And that's actually what they took to the moon for the color camera up in the moon. They used this monochrome camera with a spinning color wheel to produce color. That system actually came back, or very similar to it, with the DLP projector, which used a spinning wheel to produce red, green, and blue and shine on the DLP chip. And that color wheel spun at 9,000 RPM and 14,000 for the later generation. But that's basically how that worked. But we ended up with the RCA system. NTSC was called National Television Systems Committee is what it stands for. That's what it stands for those over in Europe that don't know. It was the systems committee that determined it, but it was the RCA system that was chosen. I think it was RCA and Zenith were both working on it, actually, the two of them, but it was RCA's proposed system that they worked on and perfected. And we had that right to when HD TV rolled out. Over in Europe, they scrapped their black and white system and developed PAL. And the French went their own way in because they didn't want to be like the rest of Europe. They went their own way and developed their own system, CCAM, which was a sequential color with memory. That's what it means when you translate it loosely. CCAM stands for sequential color with memory, because they transmitted the color sequentially, not at the same time. And they used analog memory through delay lines and stuff. I'm just chattering on here while this thing plays because we're observing this machine just to make sure that before I send it back that everything's working good and that there's no faults with it. But as you can see, the picture looks great. It's playing PAL, NTSC, and CCAM tapes, and it's playing them back flawlessly. Put my sound on here, I can play this sound. So this one's fixed. I can let the client know that owns this one that his machine is back up and running again. I'll just load the tape a few more times here to make sure everything's good. Here we go. Looking good. It goes through the auto tracking when it first starts up every time. These are good machines though. If you're looking for a multi-system machine to convert tapes, I would say this is probably the one to get if you can find them. Stay away from the AGW1 Panasonic. It was a piece of crap. I'll rewind these tapes while I'm at it. I don't think there's probably too many of them that are still working. I've got one. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked for years. Everybody sing. Gonna rewind these tapes. And I believe AWA or Iowa or however you pronounce it, they had one MX100. If you can find one of those, they did a pretty good job as well. The transports on them were quite problematic though. They had a lot of problems. I had one of those given to me, and I had one given to me because somebody else tried to fix it. And they brought it to me and said, "Can you fix this thing?" And I got into it, only to realize that somebody had butchered it. I'm still convinced it was the little LED sensor for the tape, but somebody had gotten in there with about 150 watt soldering iron and really screwed up the board, and I just never ever got around to fixing it. It was sitting here for years and years and years, and then somebody contacted me, one of my YouTube viewers, and they said, "Hey, I'll buy that from you for parts." I said, "Bonus, I'll sell it to you for parts." So it went to somebody who was looking for, I guess they were looking for a machine to either pull boards out of or probably pull the mechanism, pull parts off the mechanism to fix another one. But anyway, because I had the 5000, and for what I need, the few PAL tapes that I see, gets the job done just fine. For anyone looking to buy one of these machines, like if they need to be able to transfer PAL or CCAM tapes and they're looking for a multi-standard machine with conversion capabilities, I would say look for this one, the SV5000, over the SV4000, because this one here uses a fixed pinch roller that doesn't move. The other one uses has the capstan over here, and the pinch roller's on this side, and it's raised up and lowered like all those troublesome Mitsubishi and Sony and Panasonic machines that have the tower gear and the grease dries up on them. They have a plastic control arm that operates it and has a nasty habit of breaking on the SV4000. So keep that in mind. If you're looking for one of these machines, look for an SV5000 because the chassis on this is much better. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.